What's up, guys? Welcome back to Smoking UK, where we review, communicate, and educate all things tobacco. We're doing something right because he's back. We're joined again by George Frakes after you demanded him to come back of that much.
Hello.
Smoking the brand new Olmec from Foundation Cigars. So let's
Yeah.
run the intro. Let's find out a little bit more about him. So, George, first of all,
Mhm.
welcome back. The
Thank
people
you.
love you,
Thank you.
and
Thank
it's
you.
always a great excuse to have you back up here.
Thank you. It's good to know someone loves me, So
They did. You're probably the most demanded person we've had on the channel. No one demands me to put out another video, but we've had people demanding bring George back on.
no, that's very, very kind. And a real honor, actually. A real honor. It's always fantastic to see you.
Mm.
And yeah, it's a fantastic place to have a cigar.
Over them
Amazing people. And you do a fantastic job. So thank you very much.
No problem at all. Well, as great as the last interview that we did, it feels very poorly timed because, as we know, we went through the entire range of Foundation cigars we had in the UK, and then it was only a few weeks later you
Yeah.
announced a new one.
Yeah.
Which is
I wish I could
the
have
Olmec.
announced it last time. Yeah. Yeah. The
So,
Olmec.
how is it? How is it going down? How has it been received so far across other retailers and consumers? What have you heard?
Fantastically well. I mean, the Olmec is arguably most probably Foundation's most famous line, and it was only released a couple of years ago, actually, by Nick.
Yeah,
But it really went crazy in the US. So it's taken us a couple of years to get it here, and since then, the response has been fantastic. It's been overwhelming. Yeah, it's just it's such a unique cigar.
yeah,
And it's a cigar that I
absolutely.
really love myself. So it's purely selfish import. So
Well, I'm a part of quite a few groups across the social media, and I've got my own group with about 100 odd blokes in it. And whenever we light up a cigar, we post a picture in the chat saying, "This is what I'm smoking today, boys." The amount of times I've seen this popping up over the last 4-6 weeks is insane.
yeah,
It's absolutely
fantastic.
insane. So, what's the build behind it? 'Cause it's not the lightest cigar in the world.
No,
I wouldn't say it's made for the beginner
no,
smokers. What's the actual
I would
blend?
say so. I'd say, and maybe my palate is skewed somewhat. I have smoked a lot of very strong cigars, but I would say it's probably just below medium,
Mm,
about 5% below medium. So it's not light
yeah.
by any stretch of the imagination, as you're right. But it's not as strong as something like the Tabernacle.
No.
And it's quite interesting because the so the build of the cigar, you've got a form of Mexican San Andreas wrapper, and you've got Nicaraguan binder and filler. Now, on the surface, that's really, really simple.
Yes.
However, it's Nick Melillo, and he doesn't do anything by halves. So
Absolutely not.
to really understand the tobacco used for this, you have to understand the Olmec people. And the Olmec people were the first Mesoamerican people we know of. They predated the Mayans people.
Mm.
And the Olmec were the first pyramid builders. They were the first calendar makers. They were the first people to use rubber.
Oh, well.
And they were the first cigar smokers. And they were the native people of the San Andreas region of Mexico. So for this, Nick used a form of San Andreas in a really unusual way. That is one of the oldest seed genuses in the world.
Oh, well.
So this is a direct descendant of the actual tobaccos smoked by the Olmec. So
Wow.
in a way, that wrapper is the original cigar tobacco, and it's so rarely used today in that format because quite often when we see San Andreas, it's very dark. It's very,
Yeah,
very
it is.
sticky. Really, it's quite sticky in
It's
a
quite,
way.
it's a really
Yeah,
oily kind of wrapper, isn't it? Yeah, if you see it.
yeah, and that actually is quite unusual in terms of the native tobaccos, the Tabacalera that would grow in that region of Mexico. They tend to be sort of this color, sort of Colorado Claro.
Mm.
And so yeah,
It's absolutely beautiful. I
and
feel like lighter than what I remember it being.
yeah, absolutely. And that wrapper leaf, That wrap leaf's really interesting, and without immediately going into the weeds too much, I'll try and steer out the weeds as much as I can. But when you're looking at a San Andreas that is that color compared to a San Andreas that is darker, a San Andreas that is darker, right, will be lower in tannins, higher in sugar content.
Yeah.
So it'll be less distinctive because there are a lot of leaves out there like that.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at San Andreas, this sort of shade and this particular strain of San Andreas is really high in tannins, which does something really interesting to the palate. Because as that bleeds flavors along the sides of the palate, as it's touching the immediate palate, it's going to have quite a pleasant sort of a drying to it, which will help bring out some of the other nuances in the Nicaraguan tobaccos from Jalapa and Esteli. And again, quite unusual tobaccos used in sort of not their usual format. So yeah, it's a really interesting use of tobacco, this, and just a fantastic blend.
It really is. And the one thing I gotta love is the soft box press on it.
Yeah.
I know the box press seems to be a bit like Marmite.
Yeah.
People seem to love. I'm a personal lover of it. I know Paul isn't. He believes if cigars were supposed to be square, we'd have square mouths.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge fan, and the one thing I love is, I don't know whether you find it with other box presses, you don't always necessarily get great construction, or you might not necessarily get a straight burn. I won't mention names. But with this, it is a solidly built cigar. Like that burn is for a box press is impeccable.
Yeah, I'm quite impressed with it actually. I'm typically not the biggest fan of box presses myself.
Yeah.
I do tend to believe and agree with Paul when he says if God wanted us to smoke square cigars, we'd have a square mouth. But there's a difference between a modern box press and a traditional box press in that sense. That being very traditional. A traditional box press actually resulting from the cigars being put in a box that is too small.
Yeah.
And a modern box press being done in a mold.
Yes, absolutely. It's so comfortable in the hand.
Yeah, it is.
So we all know Nick. Like, he's a bit of a history buff.
Yeah.
No cigar, whether it's the Highclere Castle, whether it's the Chartered Oak, whether it's the Tabernacle, they've always got a story, a meaning. They normally have some form of character or avatar for it. Why did he choose the Olmec? Did he just like the story, or
It's a good question.
does it come from the originals, like what you just said?
Yeah, I think it really comes from the fact that they were the original cigar smokers. And that's a very, very important thing. We've got to bear in mind that it was the Olmec that, as far as we know, introduced tobacco and the use of rolled tobacco to the Taino, the native people of Cuba.
Yeah.
And so, and it's also one of the earliest uses of Tabacum nicotiana rather than rustica. So, as a bit of background there, most native uses of tobacco use Tabacum rustica. And that is brutal. That's the original form of tobacco. This is about 2 to 5% nicotine at most.
Right.
Tabacum nicotiana. Rustica, you're looking at 12 to 15% nicotine.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big jump.
So nicotiana being a later strain of tobacco, the Olmec were really sort of figureheads in its use.
Yeah.
And so, it runs really quite deep, Olmecs, and what we've got to thank them. Also, Google Calendar. I'd be lost without Google Calendar. And so it's just like...
Nothing in my life would get done.
Yeah. No, I'm quite grateful for that. Yeah. And pyramids are all right,
That's one thing I never knew. You think pyramids should go straight to the Middle East?
Yeah. So if you look at a lot of the Mayan pyramids, they believe that if you strip down the outside of the pyramid, in the center is usually a much older Olmec pyramid.
Ah, right, okay.
And it's they predated the Egyptians by quite some time.
We've even got a history lesson.
So
That's
yeah,
exactly.
it's that they were, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe that they were built in a slightly different way to the Egyptian pyramids. So it's not like they knew each other.
Yeah.
But the Olmec pyramids were stepped.
Oh, right. Okay. So I could be completely wrong here, but this wasn't the first Olmec cigar that Foundation released. They had a yellow label, I believe.
So
I
there
don't know
is,
whether it was over in the UK, but
Mm.
whether it was a US market kind of thing.
so they have there is the Claro and there is the Maduro.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've just got the Claro at the moment here in the UK. But yeah, the Claro I really love. The Maduro is fantastic as well. But I think that it's really important for us here, and for my personal humidor as well, to have sort of a lighter representation of Foundation.
Yeah.
And a lighter representation of what Nick does, because if his most famous cigar is actually quite light, and his sort of stronger cigars are also what he's really renowned for, it's important to have the
It's a
clarification
nice
there.
balance. And I always find that like a Maduro is quite a niche thing to like. You either love it or you never dabble in it. I know plenty of cigar smokers, as soon as they see Maduro, will just stay clear of it completely. Maybe that's misinformation, thinking it's always going to be stronger, which it
Yeah,
always isn't necessarily is.
yeah. I
I
think
think this could be a great, or where even if you are just that first starting in smoking and you want to go up that step a little bit, this is a great cigar. But if you're
Yeah.
into really full-bodied, really strong stuff and you need like a mid-afternoon smoke,
yeah,
this is a great cigar. I think anyone could find something good in this blend.
absolutely, yeah. And there's a really interesting point there as well, in the fact that the Corona Gorda, the smaller one, is slightly stronger as well. So
Okay.
if you prefer stronger cigars, you can try the Corona Gorda.
Yeah.
Because the way Nick does it is Coronas tend to be a bit stronger than everything else.
Oh, right. Okay. Is that just because his personal palate and he prefers that, or
Yeah, I think so. I think it's there's a danger of essentially weakening the blend if you try and produce a Corona that is the same strength as everything else.
yes?
I might be wrong here. I'm open to being wrong, but it's my
You can
understanding
let us know
that
in the comments.
yeah, please do. But it's my understanding that if you're using specific ligeros and everything, they're integral to the blend. You're going to have to use enough of those ligeros in order to actually maintain the core flavor profile of the cigar.
Okay.
And if you're doing that in a smaller format,
Yeah.
then yeah, the proportions go slightly out of whack.
Yes. So when he created this one, did he create it at the same time as the Maduro, or did the Maduro do so well that he wanted to release another one in that same line?
I think it was at the same time.
Same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was at the same time. So he's done that with a few lines. He did that with the El Wenze and Wiseman. Actually, they came separately. But they came separately. That he produced the Corojo and the Maduro, and he's done the same with the new Wiseman, which is in the Corojo and Maduro, and that came out at the same time, and the Axum as well.
Oh well.
So yeah.
So when we look at the whole Foundation lines in our last video, we went up through them in strength. We started off on the lightest. Where would you sit this when it comes to strength, bodiness, flavor profile? Where would you sit this in the line that we have in the UK?
In the line that we have in the UK, I'd say it's probably the lightest.
Okay.
I'd say it's probably the lightest. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree.
It's the lightest. There are none that are really light.
No.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's quite succinct.
That's what it took me so long to
Yeah.
take on the Tabernacle.
Yeah.
You actually gave me 2. You went, "I'll just smoke it."
Yeah, just smoke it, mate.
And I did. And I was sat with Des and I went, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to do it. If I'm going to feel sick, I'd rather be with somebody else." And it was a lot smoother than I thought.
Yeah.
I think that cigar is the perfect definition of don't judge a cigar by its colour, because it looked like it should kill you.
Yeah, it does,
And
right?
it's very smooth.
It really does.
Very sweet.
It really does. And that's the funny thing, like with the Tabernacle, I found that time and time again where people are a little afraid of it, and understandably, because it looks like it potentially could be brutal.
Yes.
Uh,
The band doesn't help. It's a very dark looking thing.
yeah, but when you smoke it, it's just so well balanced. It's just so well balanced that the strength is secondary, and
Yes.
that's from what other people have told me. Because, admittedly, at the time when I first smoked the Tabernacle, I was smoking a lot of very strong cigars, and I didn't think it was that strong. So I sort of sought a lot of advice from people who don't usually smoke strong cigars, and I was giving them the Tabernacle. Yeah, there are a few people who only smoke Epicure number twos who are like, I can't do this.
Yes.
But yeah, yeah,
It seems to be. I've had it a few times in here, and they said, "Oh, James, can you help us pick a cigar?" Oh, I like my mediums to fulls, and I'll pick them out the Tabernacle, saying that this is really nice, and their face is always, "Oh no, no,
yeah,
you sure?" And I'm like, "Trust me,
mm,
just trust the process with it.
yeah.
I've been there, done that. I've been scared of it myself."
It's quite a
It's a very
yeah,
unique cigar. It's slowly
it's
becoming my
fantastic.
favorite of the Foundation range. It used to be the Chartered Oak.
Yeah,
Now it's the High Clear Castle,
yeah.
which is hands down probably my favorite Foundation. But then the
It's
Tabernacle
amazing.
is very
Mm.
a very close second.
The high clear is really cool, isn't it? I've been
It's
smoking a lot of those recently.
even just down to the story behind it. It's always a beautiful smoke. It's always amazing construction. I've
Mm.
never had one fall apart on me. Even burn never goes out. You haven't got to touch it. It's just an all round
Yeah, it
solid
is.
thick. And the reviews we're getting, if I'm here, I call it the Cuban converter.
Yeah.
The amount of people that will come in and say, I only smoke Cubans, but I want a more affordable stick,
Mm.
but I need it to have similar taste profiles. Straight to High Click Castle, and they'll message us on Instagram going, "Oh my god, you're right. This is such an amazing." I call it the Cuban converter,
That's very cool. That's very cool.
and we'll take that.
That's very cool. I think, did we speak about 19th century cigars last time?
We briefly touched on it because we
Yeah.
kind of rushed through
Yeah.
the range. We briefly touched on it.
Did we speak about shade growing technique? 19, I'm trying to remember now.
I don't think we did.
All right. So this is really interesting. So obviously it's based on a 19th century cigar, the High Clear Castle, and it's based on it was produced using the original invoice ledgers and original copy invoices from High Clear Castle of the cigars that were smoked in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And so Nick has cigars dating back to I think the 1850s. And using his knowledge of cigar history, he produced the High Clear Castle, which is a 19th century cigar using modern tobaccos.
Yeah.
The really interesting thing about it, one of the techniques he used for the wrapper is that it's grown in a specific place in Ecuador that has a specific amount of sunlight.
Yeah.
And the reason he did this is, do we know what shade growing technique is? So
Go to canopies.
yeah, exactly. So shade growing technique is where most wrapper leaves are grown in the shades under canopies which cover the fields for miles and miles. They'll be made of cloth, usually a white cloth held up with sticks.
Yeah.
And that is the way that we grow the most wrappers. However, that only came in 1902. And the reason it came in is really interesting. So in the late 19th century, Cuba and Connecticut exported a huge amount of tobaccos to be produced and used in domestic market cigars. And domestic market cigars are when cigars are rolled in the country that they're sold in, but out of tobaccos from out of that country.
Yeah.
So here in the UK, we actually produced cigars out of Cuban tobacco, 100% hand-rolled long filler, right up to the 90s.
Yeah.
And there were factories, for instance, in Nottingham, and in Bristol that were just like Cuban cigar factories, using Cuban tobacco, making Cuban cigars. And the same applied for tobaccos from Connecticut. But in the late 19th century, their trade dried up. People just stopped buying the tobacco. And economies were being really affected. They were going for a really hard time. So the US Department of Agriculture and the new Cuban government got together to figure out why this was happening. It turned out that people were buying tobacco grown by the Dutch in Indonesia, and the Dutch in Indonesia were producing tobacco that was really, really thin, really, really high quality, and really, really elastic. Now, when you're making cigars, this means that you'll get less wastage. It's very elastic.
Yeah.
Thin means you pay less duty on it,
True.
right?
Right.
Duties by weight.
Yes.
And therefore, you get something that's high quality at a lower price, easier to work with, that you're going to waste less of. Right. So they got together, the Americans and the Cubans, and they created a seed that we now know as Connecticut Shade.
Yeah.
And that's where Connecticut Shade came from. And Connecticut Shade was a cross between a few Cuban seeds at the time. I think it was Peladoro and Connecticut Broadleaf. But that didn't work. So what they did is they looked at where the tobacco was grown. And in Indonesia, when you grow tobacco in the jungle, and that's the only place you can grow it,
Yeah.
You have to make a clearing in the jungle, and it's a square clearing. Now, if you imagine a square clearing, the sun's going to come around and shade the tobacco for 2/3 of the day.
Yes.
So the tobacco's having to try and reach for the sun, and it's being starved of sunlight, so it's very thin and very tall with more leaves.
Yes.
And so that is when in 1902 they put shades on the fields to recreate the conditions of the Indonesian jungle in order to make a leaf that was easier to work with, lower in price. And that's what that is.
Wow.
And so that's why, that's one of the reasons why the sort of 19th century style wrapper on the high clear is so special.
Wow.
because it don't use any of the techniques that came after that.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy actually, and the way that I love the fact that there's just so much sort of geopolitical history going on as well, just around the sale of tobacco and in bulk, and conflicts of empire and so forth. It's amazing.
That's amazing. I'm gonna cut that bit down and just put that on our website.
Yeah.
The history of the. So I absolutely never. I knew what it was. I knew what it tasted, but I never understood that was the process of it.
Yeah, it's really quite incredible actually. It is really quite incredible, and it's something that we don't speak about a lot because it's one of those things that is actually quite interesting for us as cigar smokers, but it is largely useless knowledge. I mean, like, it is largely useless knowledge. It's important to get context, but there's so many in that piece of history. There are so many points. For one, it was a new Cuban government, and they just it just ceased being a Spanish colony. So the Americans also saw that as a great opportunity to get in with Cuba. And then the way that developed through to the revolution is incredible, because really that sort of that working together in 1902 in a way was the first sort of tiny little spark to create the fire that became the revolution.
Yes.
Because once the Americans were in Cuba, they started buying up Cuban businesses, and then it moved through to when everything changed.
Does we very briefly touched on the first video that we did? Does Nick actually own his own factories and his own farms, or is he like what a lot of companies are starting to do now, and he just sources? Because I know he's got contacts everywhere. He's very highly thought of. Or does he just say, "Oh, I'm going to speak to these farms and these factories and just source everything that I need," or does he actually own his own factories and his own farms himself?
It's a very good question. So he doesn't own any farms or factories. There's a very good reason for that. For one, the office is actually based on a Connecticut broadleaf farm. Yeah. But it's owned by Dunn and Foster.
Right. Okay.
The actual farm itself. So Dunn and Foster really are the best broadleaf people, and they're very good friends of Nick. So it means that when Nick gets broadleaf, he's the chief of broadleaf anyway, but he gets the best of the best from the best.
Yes.
The other thing is that if you have your own plantation, if you have your own farm, you're relying on the quality of your crop.
Yeah.
It's really, really risky, right? And so if you take Nick's previous business, he ran the largest cigar factory in the world, but they didn't grow a single leaf. So they so in their case, they would only ever buy tobacco. And that meant that Nick, because he ran the largest cigar factory in the world and he sourced the tobacco, he really got the best context.
Yeah.
When you're buying that much tobacco, people really give you your best stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and they give you access to everything. So for Nick, really, it makes sense to source the tobacco. The cigars themselves are rolled at the A.J. Fernández factory and some at the My Father factory as well.
Wow. Now that's really impressive. I went round the My Father factory.
Mm.
And have you had a chance to head out to Nicaragua and check it out yet?
No, I haven't yet.
The My
I
Father
haven't yet,
factory.
no.
So they were all different and all unique in their own little ways. But it was so strange. So we went to the Hoya factory on day one, and then we went, which is very old, very traditional. They stick with the it ain't broken, we're not fixing it. Then very traditional.
Yeah, yeah.
And they walk into My Father's, and it's absolutely incredible. They have their own like green ecosystem where nothing goes to waste. They truly do produce some of the best tobaccos.
Yeah,
And even their fields is insane. The sheer amount, which they have to.
yeah.
Because it's My Father.
It's an incredible operation, incredible place.
Mm-mm.
You know,
I've never
and-
seen a more clean. You could have eaten your food and your dinner
yeah,
off the rolling booms floor.
that's
It's
very cool.
That's clean.
That
It's
is
almost like a
very cool.
hospital.
That is very cool. I like that. I like that. You know,
So that's how you know you're getting good quality.
yeah. But it's a really it's really prestigious thing for Nick to work with him. Actually, I think it's the new Wise Man, which we haven't yet got in the UK. But the new Wise Man he made with Don Pepin Garcia.
Yes.
And Don Pepin doesn't really work with anyone.
I was going to say My Father. Yeah, he's very
Yeah.
niche and unique. Not many people work with him.
Yeah,
Obviously, you got Tatawahe, so it's quite impressive that
yeah.
Nick worked with him as well.
It's quite a close shop, you know. So it
Very
really,
much, yeah.
yeah. It's quite.
And just to say that you've worked on a cigar with Pepin is it's bragging rights in its own sense, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think they've known each other for years. So it's amazing to see them working together.
Yeah. It was great meeting Nick. He's a lot younger than I thought he was.
Yeah.
It's either that or he's got an incredible skincare routine. I don't know. I was expecting like quite an older gentleman. He's done so much.
He's sponsored by Olay.
Yeah.
I think there's is that Olay the brand? I don't know.
Something like that,
Clarence. There's but yeah, he's
done so much.
guy.
He's done so much in such a short
Yeah.
amount of when you was explaining it to him on the last video. Obviously, I hadn't met him at that point. I was expecting about a guy in his mid-60s, maybe 70s, been around quite a bit because you told his story of his upcoming.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't checked out, I'll leave a link down below for our previous video. I was expecting like a really old guy walking in, and he wasn't. He's absolutely amazing.
You got to bear in mind that he was basically running a cigar shop when he was at high school. So he started really young, and he's achieved a huge amount in a fairly short space of time.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to a lot of people that are at his level and have been probably in the industry 20, 30 years longer than him.
Yeah.
You know, he's producing. It's absolutely insane. I want to get him on the channel at some point.
Yeah.
Even if it's a remote one. I think it'd be a long video because once you get him talking about but he's so passionate about his product. That's the one thing I loved about him, and that almost comes off on him. He hasn't even got to talk. You could just be stood next to him or hear him smoking one of his own products, and it's just he's not producing it because he can.
No,
he's producing it because he genuinely
loves it, and that's one of the first things that drew me to Foundation is I saw Nick speaking at a cigar event, right? Yeah. And when admittedly I turned up late, right? And when I first started seeing him speak, I didn't realize that he produced the cigars. You know, I thought he was just talking about the cigars, and he was talking about them with such sort of love and passion. And I realized it's because he produces cigars that he wants to smoke.
Yes.
He produces cigars that he wants to smoke. He doesn't produce cigars because he thinks that they would sell.
Yeah.
he produces really authentic, just things because they should be made.
Yeah. And I think you can taste. I always say a cigar is a labor of love, and I think you can tell when a particular brand or company hasn't put their all, and they've done exactly what you just said. They've produced it 'cause they think, oh, the market wants that, or this particular country has a stronger palate. We're going to produce a big, strong cigar kind of thing. And even those cigar companies won't even smoke it themselves. They just produce it because it's a money making machine.
Yeah.
And then you hear Nick talk. You actually ushered us out of the room. You went, James, we've got to be going now.
Yeah.
Everyone, can you be? You must have made about 10 announcements, guys. JJ Fox are kicking us out. Can you all go? And still just stood there talking to Nick about
That's the
about it
thing.
all.
That's the thing. I wouldn't blame you. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave, but also I don't blame them for wanting to close up the doors. Yeah,
We
yeah.
could have all just been sat there all night. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
It was
I do have a
brilliant.
bit of a reputation for being pretty brutal when kicking people out. So yeah.
Sorry. I thought it was quite polite.
That's good. That's good.
It was absolutely brilliant. And especially when it came to this, I don't think there was a bad review in the whole room.
No,
Everyone kind of lit it up and everyone kind of went,
yeah.
wow, okay. And just like you said at the beginning of the video, it's a really unique flavour, especially on that initial light up.
Yeah.
The one thing I found with this is, and we explained it in the last video as well, is that your initial light up of a cigar will always be stronger compared to maybe a centimetre in. I don't really find that with this. There's obviously a balanced spice because there's Nicaraguan tobacco, there's jalapa in it, but it's not like a spice bomb on the initial light.
Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? I've noticed that.
A beautiful blend.
I don't know why that happens, but it is there. And it means that it develops in a fantastic way, right?
Yeah. And even now I'm slowly coming up to the final third. I wouldn't say the spice has kicked up or ramped up. It's a very comfortable cigar to smoke.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where the one thing I noticed with, especially like the Wise Man, that does come up with a bit of a kick towards the end of it. The High Clear Castle does as well, which I love. But this is a really comfortable, and I'm pairing it with coffee at the moment.
Oh, right.
And because it's got it's a nice little balanced spice. It's pairing together hand in hand.
Yeah, here's a question for you. What would you pair it with?
This particular one, non-alcoholic, I'd go coffee, but I go sweeter coffee. So I'm going to sound like I should be studying Starbucks. I've got caramel and hazelnut syrup latte.
Where'd you get that? All right.
So come to smoking, we do better coffee than Starbucks and Costa. But I think it was going to go down the alcohol route. Welsh whiskey would go really nice with it.
Welsh whiskey,
because it's very mild. Welsh whiskey is very similar to Irish. It's not like there's no peatiness or anything to it. The Welsh would go really nice. Rum, and I'll blame Paul for that as well, converting me to rum drinking, especially the Plantree pineapple rum.
Plantree pineapple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to try and get
you. Has it got pineapple in it?
I think so.
Okay. All right.
We should know because me and Paul put a bottle away the other day.
Oh, fantastic.
That's what we were drinking.
Fantastic.
And it's a shameful plug, but the smoking one, because the smoking one's got a lot of caramel notes and a lot of fruit behind it.
Okay. Well, it would make sense to me that would be perfectly balanced to suit a cigar.
Yes.
So,
yeah, yes, absolutely.
I wouldn't expect any less.
But my new favourite one, and everyone's always surprised when they hear it, is cream soda. That's my new favourite drink to pair with a cigar.
Cream soda?
Cream soda.
Yeah.
And the only reason I found that out, it was the only thing I had left in my house. I was due to go shopping. I could have had water or cream soda. And I thought, well, I'll see how we go. You get
all right.
It might be a nice sweet and savoury, and it just pairs.
Any particular brand?
Beautifully. I had the cheap bars that used to get as kids. You remember bar?
Yeah, but that's going to be the best, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just pure sugar. It's like diabetes in a bottle, but it's that paired with a cigar is incredible.
Sweeter drinks do that, don't they?
Yes.
No, you say that because the only time I ever drink Coca-Cola is with a cigar sometimes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And maybe we could cut that bit out. Yeah. It really works. It just really works. And the sweeter coffees as well. Again, the only time really to put sugar in a coffee or to have a hazelnut caramel lavender latte is with a cigar. A few people say that. Also milk, apparently.
Milk. That's not one I've tried yet.
Yeah, milk.
Milk. I have been to a cigar and ice cream event
That sounds really good.
at
What-
one of our competitors, so I won't mention the name, but I can tell you after. But that worked really well. They had an ice cream truck,
Yeah,
and we had Mr. Whippy ice cream
Mr. Whippy.
and a cigar,
Okay.
and it paired beautifully. It was again, you got the whole creaminess and the sweetness, but then you had the nice spice and cedar and the coke coming from the sky. It worked
That's really
insane. It's the most bizarre event I've ever been to, and they haven't ran one since. And I don't know why.
That's very interesting.
But Mr. Whippy ice cream and a cigar.
Do you know what I think would go very well is an affogato, which is the gelato with an espresso poured on top.
Or yes,
Yeah.
we'll have to do an event. A
Yeah.
foundation.
Now I'm thinking, yeah, foundation and
That
affogato. I know Nick would like that actually. That's yeah. But
Cool.
I know Nick swears by sparkling water.
I love pairing sparkling water.
Mm.
The only problem is that you have it with sparkling water. Sparkling water cleans your palate.
Yeah.
So it works in certain aspects. I think if you're sitting down to sample that cigar and you want to be able to taste every single step of that cigar, sparkling water is great. It almost resets your palate every time
Yeah.
you take the puff.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of people who they'll have a cigar and then they'll go brush their teeth with sparkling water.
Really?
Because sparkling water, it cleans all your palate. If you ever have, here's a little note for you. If you've got cigar mouth in the morning,
Yeah.
go drink a bottle or a glass of sparkling water and it will kill it. It's better than any mouthwash
Yeah.
to get rid of cigar mouth
Okay.
in sparkling water. So I can imagine if he's coming up with like a new blend and he's sampling all these cigars,
Yeah.
sparkling water probably would be the best thing. Because it cleanses almost, it won't completely, but it cleanses his palate between each puff.
Interesting.
Mm.
That's very interesting. It's a shame it tastes horrible.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
consume about 2 liters of sparkling water a day.
Yeah, fair enough. If you drink, that's
It's
good.
a
If
very
you drink
unique
2
thing
liters
to
of
want.
water of any kind, that's good. That's good.
But I think my favourite pairing we did with this, and we were talking about it earlier, it was at the launch event in London. The teas.
Yeah.
And I've still to say I've never heard anybody pairing tea with a cigar.
No, so I because I don't drink alcohol.
Yes.
I drink a lot of tea with cigars. I drink a lot of tea in general, and there are fantastic pairings out there. Yerba mate, which we had at the event, that had lemon verbena and ginger in it as well.
It was beautiful.
Is really interesting because, as you were saying, you steep it multiple times, and you get different flavor profiles each time. And yerba mate is from the same sort of region of the world that cigars first came from.
Mm.
So there's sort of joined indigenous use there.
Yeah.
So it's a really sort of integral pairing, and it works really well. Another really good pairing for teas that I swear by is milk oolong. And now milk oolong hasn't got any milk in it, but it's a specific form of oolong that is grown at higher elevation in Taiwan.
Right, okay.
And because of the elevation, it has certain compounds in the leaves that make it taste like it's got milk in it. But oolong, aside from matcha, oolong has the highest L-theanine content. Now, matcha tea is fantastic. It's too bright to pair with cigars, and too sort of acidic.
Yeah.
But oolong has that really well-rounded flavor profile that tends to sort of go blanket across the board with tobacco. And the L-theanine content will actually increase your olfactory senses. So L-theanine is a fantastic thing when you're looking at sort of actually analyzing the flavor of anything, whether it's in a passive way or in an active way.
Yeah. So there you go. Go get you some teas.
Yeah. Yeah. Milk oolong and yerba mate.
I just love the fact that it tastes healthy, so you don't feel that bad for sitting in a cigar lounge with about 40 other blokes putting a load of smoke in the air that people say that is really unhealthy for us. We had a very nice, healthy tasting tea.
Yeah, very healthy tasting tea.
It was kind of a very humbling experience.
Yeah. I didn't tell you about like the 500 spoons of sugar in each cup. But yeah. No.
That's fine.
No.
No, it was a really, really good event. It was absolutely fantastic. And it was great to... There's so many knowledgeable people at the event. I know it was an invite only, so it was probably specific people were invited. But the amount of knowledge that was being passed around that room that day was insane.
It was a bit insane, actually. Yeah, it was a bit insane. That's a real sort of, that was a very special evening. That's a very special evening. I was really extremely glad to have you there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to turn that down.
Yeah. It's just fantastic to hear Nick speak in a way where he got, a little bit more time than usual. Because usually when you're at events, understandably, yes, you don't want to speak for too long.
Yeah.
But
I think it's just his wealth of knowledge. He could have sat there for like 3-4 hours just talking
easy
through his line.
Easy.
I think you did usher in at some point. You went, it was like, right, okay, we've got to.
Yeah.
George is giving me the nod. We've got to pour the next drink.
Yeah.
How did he find the UK?
He loved it. He loved it.
Really?
Yeah. Loved it here at Smoking, and yeah.
We've got a cracking photo, which is now on the front cover of our website.
Yeah.
You and Nick are on our front page of our website, on our homepage. It's absolutely cracking photo.
I hope that doesn't deter people.
I don't know. His smile is so big; it's contagious, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I think he could convert anyone to start enjoying a cigar.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing that he loved it so much, because I've been speaking to other distributors and other importers of cigars, and they have to have a really in-depth talk to these cigar brands and almost set their expectations that the UK market is nowhere near as big as the US. These people aren't going to be spending 50,000-60,000 pounds in one order. And I've heard a lot of cigar companies don't actually they want to break into the UK because we are quite an important market when it comes to cigars, but they don't actually enjoy coming over here. So it's quite refreshing that he did quite like it here.
Well, the really amazing thing, Nick said something right, that I found really interesting. That the US market is fantastic. Yeah. It's an incredible place, the United States, and the US cigar market is fantastic. But it's very different to here, because as with any market, when the numbers get that high, right, you inevitably get more and more people involved who aren't in it for the cigars in this case. And therefore the passion tends to be somewhat diminished for cigars. And I know that he was blown away by just the amount of passion for cigars there is in the UK.
Yeah.
And that is in part what makes us a really influential market, because we're one of the most passionate markets. We're one of the most influential markets. We really love what we do. We really love what we smoke.
Yes. And we want to know everything about that cigar as well.
Absolutely.
I've got a lot of friends in the US, and they'll always be recommending me a cigar, and I'm like, oh, what's in the? Oh, it just tastes great. Where I think most passionate cigar smokers over here, they could tell you what the filler is, the binder is, the wrapper, how long it's been fermented, has it been aged in bourbon barrel. It's very much if we're going to sit here and smoke a cigar, we want to know everything that's in it.
We really want to know, don't we?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing. I find that fascinating. We might be small, but we're mighty.
We are small and mighty. How did he find the weather? It's very different to where he's based.
Yeah. I think he quite enjoyed it, actually. It's not too dissimilar to Connecticut here. It gets hotter in Connecticut, and it gets colder in Connecticut. But around sort of the mid times of year, is here in May, it's not too different.
So we can expect another visit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Get on the case, Nick, yeah?
Yeah. But you've heard it here, and I will send you this.
We want you back. We want you back.
Come over here.
But it's very different to Nicaragua, because I know that it does get up to, how hot was it when you were in Nicaragua?
It's probably averaging 35, 40 degrees.
So that is unnatural.
But there was no humidity. We was all walking around in chinos and button-down shirts, and it didn't really feel that hot, even when we was in the fields. Obviously, we all had our big Panama hats on and to keep the shade off, but it didn't feel that bad. But then you hit 20 degrees over here, and it's brutal.
It is
because of the humidity.
It is, yeah.
Which is strange, because you think they'd have higher They've obviously got a higher humidity count out there, because that's how they go out the But no, it was funny. We was going into the aging rooms and the fermentation rooms, which obviously where the humidity is really high, and we were just dying to get back out in the sun because it was cooler. It was more comfortable.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? The way that temperature and humidity interact. You can tell that into cigars. So the way that temperature and humidity interact is really important for keeping cigars.
Yes.
Because if you're keeping, for instance, older cigars, you want to keep them at a much lower temperature and a lower humidity. This doesn't actually mean that the cigars will be drier. It means that they'll just be sort of kept safer. So at a lower temperature, you're slowing down fermentation, you're slowing down microbial movement, the actual natural fungal and bacterial content of the cigar. You're slowing down that interaction and you're allowing a more complete fermentation. And when you reduce the humidity with that, it will remain constant because a lower humidity and a lower temperature will be the same as a high humidity and high temperature.
Right. Okay.
So something, let's say, a rough rule that I've always used is something around 14 degrees and 60, sorry, around 14 degrees and 60%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about the same as 70% and 19 degrees or room temperature, 20 degrees.
Well, so I know I keep mine a lot cooler. On
Mm.
average, my humidor sits, because it's an electric one, sits around about the 16 mark, and it
That's really
sits
good.
about
Yeah,
63, 64.
Yeah, that's
maximum
perfect.
it would sit at.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So do you think as a country and as cigar smokers, are we just really fixated and anal when it comes to the temperature and humidity? And the reason I ask this is 'cause I've spoke to other importers and other cigar companies, and they think we fixate on it too much. One particular person from another importer said you could leave, especially because the humidity in the UK never varies that dramatically. You could very comfortably leave your cigars on the sides for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it would smoke exactly the same as it comes out of a humidor. I know my opinions on it is it's a load of rubbish, and I'd always keep mine in a humidor with a Tupperware or something. What's your thoughts on it? Because I get a different answer every time I ask it.
I'm sure this person is very highly esteemed, and I'm sure they know what they're talking about. However, have you tried doing that?
No, I don't want to ruin my cigars.
I have tried
That's
it.
my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. So I've heard this before, so I tried it. Yeah, and I've tried it a few times, and it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Maybe you just have a very humid house.
It's so temperature and humidity is really important there. There's just too much variance here.
Yeah.
There's just too much variance. Even inside, there's a huge amount of variance with temperature and humidity.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, there might be certain times of year that actually, basically, we're living in a humidor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the vast majority of the year, we're not.
That was my theory on it, is especially depending on where you live. One day you could be really humid, the next day it's really dry. This is why I've never bothered trying that theory out myself.
It's also, I mean, you've got to think about external pollutants as well. And this is where you get sort of maybe a bit too into the weeds, right? But when you're talking about just external things touching your cigars over time, I mean, you leave your cigars on the side, you have a meal, it's not going to affect it. Yeah.
No, I always take mine out about an hour before I smoke them anyway.
It's not going to affect it anyway. But if you leave them on the side for 2 weeks, you're going to notice some changes. And the biggest thing you're going to notice is that it'll be much sort of tarier, it'll be a much leatherier smoke.
Oh, right. Okay.
And a lot of the oils will have been sort of essentially, it will have dissipated.
Yeah.
With variance in humidity, because with variance in humidity, when water's moving in and out of the cigar, it's taking oils with it.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. So yeah, you've got to be really careful with temperature and humidity. And the other thing, of course, is tobacco beetle.
That's my biggest fear. And touch wood, I've never experienced one yet. I know plenty of cigar smokers that have.
Yeah,
touch wood, I've not.
You never seen one?
No, I'm too scared of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to open up my humidor and I'm like hundreds and thousands of pounds.
I've seen some really brutal things. I've seen some really horrible things, actually. Yeah, it's really horrible stuff.
I think it'd just be heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
my whole stash of cigars I've got.
It is. you know, particularly like, so I used to do a lot of verifications and have a look at a lot of people's sort of historical collections. And you'd see a box, let's say, and it would be, let's say, a sealed box of La Corona Coronas from the 30s.
Mm.
Yeah. Right. And it's still sealed in wax paper. It's a beautiful thing. You take the wax paper off, you know, it looks like it's just come out of the shop,
Yeah.
not discolored at all. Yeah. You open the box, all the lithographs and everything as if they've just been printed. Yeah. 90 years old. You pull back the paper. The cigars look like they've been through a paper shredder.
Oh, my soul would die with me that day.
So then that would go from being a 20 to 30 grand box of cigars to literally being worthless.
Yes.
So it's just, yeah.
So what's your take on the theory? And this is probably one of the most talked about theories I see across social media in the different groups, is people freezing their cigars for a couple of days when they first get it. I know a cigar smoker will only keep his cigars in a Tupperware in the fridge.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people will take their cigars, especially if it's taken maybe a week to get to them. They'll put the cigars in the freezer for 24, 48 hours before taking it over to the humidor.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on?
I think it's
that
wise.
Does it work?
I think it's wise. If you buy anything here in the UK, right? If it's from a shop here in the UK, if you buy anything from Smoke King, there's no reason to freeze it.
No.
None whatsoever, right? Because it should have already been through that process.
Yes. Yeah.
And it would have been for that process before it reached Smoke King.
Yes.
However, when you're looking at, if you go on holiday and you bring back some cigars, it's highly recommended to freeze them. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And the process is from a sort of a formal point of view, the process would be to wrap each cigar in cling film and then put them in a Ziploc bag.
Right.
You want to put that in the fridge for 24 hours, in the freezer for 48 hours. Depends on the temperature of your freezer, but a household freezer, 48 hours minimum, and then back in the fridge for 24 hours. And then you put them at room temperature for 24 hours. Then you take them out of the cling film.
Yeah.
And then you put them in the humidor.
So you don't have that dramatic change of
Exactly.
temperatures.
And there's a beetle kill chart, which I'll send to you. And then maybe you guys can see it, which is really, really cool. Where if you're ever worried about beetles, the beetle kill chart will tell you at which temperatures different stages of beetles are the beetle are killed. So you've got the eggs, the larvae, the pupae, and the adult beetle. And what you want to do, the aim is not to kill the beetle. So if you're killing the beetle, it's too late. You want to kill the eggs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put that on the website if you got it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It's really useful.
That's really interesting.
And the dangerous thing isn't the beetle, it's the larvae.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. So we've obviously got quite a large range of Foundation cigars in the UK. Has Nick got any future plans? Well, one, has he got any future plans for any new cigars? Was he happy with the line he's got at the moment? And have we got any future plans? Obviously, I know these have only recently just landed with us, but I know his range of cigars is like this, and we receive.
Yeah.
Cigar brands we do in the UK. We get a good selection.
Yeah,
What's
we
the
do.
future plans with Foundation Cigars?
Future plans. It's a good question. I don't know a huge amount myself at the moment. Is the honest answer.
I think that's a good answer. Keep it up to surprise.
I do know that there is Nick usually does some new things for the PCA.
Yes. Yeah.
And quite often they're launched at PCA, which will be in New Orleans next year.
Yes.
And it's be probably something very exciting, I think.
Okay.
I do know that we will be seeing more lines here in the UK.
I think that's good because the lines that we have at the moment, I've never heard anyone say anything bad from them. We know we've got a few customers here that every time they come in, they go, "I want the next found." They've almost like started on the top shelf.
Yeah.
And SK there's about 4 shelves of Foundation, and they're just working left to right.
That's very cool.
down, and we still haven't had any bad reviews on the Foundation
I'm
line.
so glad to hear
anything
that.
new we can get, I think, is
I'm so glad
just
to
going to
hear
be
that.
that bonus.
I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, yeah, that's why, you know, and that's why one of the reasons why we started bringing them into the UK, because yeah, it's the cigar that converted me, and I had that experience. You know,
Yeah.
I smoked the first Foundation, it converted me. I looked at the whole rest of the world, and then every Foundation I tried, I was blown away with. So
Yeah, absolutely. They're absolutely fantastic.
and I'm really, really stubborn and very picky. So yeah.
I can be very much like that. If you haven't grabbed me within the first third of the cigar, I can be like, and I've never had that with Foundation.
Yeah.
They're always amazing. Some of them look more daunting than the other. We'll go back to the tabernacle.
Yeah.
But even then, it's
That's
absolutely beautiful.
That's that Connecticut broadleaf, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's a higher sugar content. It's so dark.
Yeah.
So the darkness of the leaf simply denotes the sugar content. But then a good way to think of that is that it should be slightly sweeter on the actual immediate palate, slightly sweeter on the lips.
It's absolutely,
So yeah,
it's absolutely stunning. So what about 1573? Obviously, it's only been about 6 weeks since, or 2 months since I've last seen you.
yeah.
Are we still just enjoying dealing with the Foundation cigars, or are you looking at other brands to bring in as well?
No.
Still just taking on the whole track and trace that's been pushed back to next year.
Yeah. So thankfully track and trace sorted. And well, to be honest with you, we're not looking at other brands. Our whole thing is that we want to maintain that focus.
Yeah.
And Foundation is a little like a parent brand with loads of different sub brands. So to cloud that with other parent brands would dilute that.
Yes. Yeah.
They're quite separate brands, and until fairly recently, Foundation actually wasn't on the band itself.
Oh, right.
So if you look at the Olmec band, I've already lost my Olmec band. It's quite windy.
Yeah.
I think it usually hit me in the face. If you look at the Olmec band, that was one of the first, I believe, to actually have Foundation on the outside of the band. If you look at the Tabernacle band, Foundation is just inside the band.
Right.
You don't actually visibly see it until you take the band off. And it's a really lovely way of doing it, because it is just sort of Nick Melillo as Foundation, but he is producing lots of different brands.
Yes. I love the cigar bands on the Foundations.
And I'll tell you something, right? Something really cool about the Olmec. Yeah, and I'm going to grab this box here. So if you see that little picture of a cigar,
yes,
that's the oldest ever picture of a cigar. So that is a Olmec carving there. That Olmec carving is thousands of years old. And it's quite amazing, isn't it? So you can see that they've got two bands holding the leaves together.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Which probably would have been gold bands, possibly. And you can see that it is quite clearly a cigar that is smoking. It could be a carrot or a weird sea creature. It depends on which way it's up, right?
I've never noticed it before. I've never noticed. Yeah. And I think going back to what we was talking about earlier, this is what I love about Nick and Foundation in general, is it's not just thrown together. None of it is, even down to the artwork on the boxes and the fact you can tell he's a history buff.
Yeah,
you can tell he loves the fact that he didn't just go, "Oh, we can use," especially in modern day. We can just use AI to generate a picture of an Olmec smoking a cigar.
Yeah,
he's gone and used the oldest carving. That's what I love about it. There's no stone unturned when it comes to Foundation.
It's fantastic, isn't it? It's something really. There's something really deeply ingrained in Foundation with a sense of history, and I think that comes from Nick growing up in Connecticut as well, which is a really historic state. And Connecticut's tie to cigars is incredible, because I was talking to Nick recently, and he's doing some research at the moment, but it's possible that one of the first ever cigar factories could have been in Connecticut.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah. And so he's the man going out and doing lots of research to find out.
I'd love to sit with him for it. It's probably months and months and months. I'd just love to see the process that he goes through from, I've got this idea to the final product. Because he must be so in depth with
Oh yeah,
everything
yeah.
that he does.
Everything. But I think there is sort of a stream of consciousness where it goes really into the weeds, but it's naturally following it into the weeds.
Yes.
You know, that those carvings of cigar are just one of the examples. You see that and you've got to use it, haven't you?
Yes.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And it's something really that brings it back to how ancient a practice it is, both for us to harness fire and for us to actually enjoy the benefits of fire, essentially,
Yes.
and reminds us of that.
We touched on it in the previous video we did.
Yeah.
And do you know that's the most viewed clip
Yeah,
from our last video? Is that explanation that we are naturally drawn to fire and to the flame, the majestic of the whole fire thing. That's our most. We've probably had about 10,000 views on that one particular videos
fantastic.
alone.
It's I'm so glad to hear that, because it's a really important thing to remember when we're smoking cigars.
Yes,
You know, I think it's a really important thing because we as human beings increasingly need something to bond over. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Something to actually come together over. And that is just such an incredibly important thing to do over something so ancient. And it's something that's unavoidable.
Yeah.
You know, it
Absolutely.
really is.
And how many other products and how many other things on the market can you say that people come together in such passion? Whiskies, rums,
Yeah.
maybe because again it's still a very old way of
Yeah.
producing things. But cigars, pipes, tobacco in general.
Yeah, tobacco is really unique there. It is really unique there because you can still drive after you consume it
Exactly.
at the end of the day.
Smoke and drive. That
Don't
should be our
drink and
next.
drive,
That should
yeah.
be our next ad campaign. Don't drink and drive. Smoke and drive.
Yeah, basically. But it is really important, and it's just I think particularly increasingly with even over the past few weeks, the increasing divide in humanity, I think,
Yeah.
spurred by the immediate availability of information that may not necessarily be correct,
Yes. Completely agree.
has resulted in us needing more and more things to come together over.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the reasons why cigars is so important.
That's a really good point to speak about. Is the one thing I love about cigars is there's no judgment. It doesn't matter your background, your upbringing, your occupation. You could be sat there. I could be sat here smoking a £4 stick. You could be smoking a £400 stick.
Yeah.
But we still have that one bond. We still have that one thing, and you'd still be sat there for hours, still talking about that one product.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is the one thing I love about some cigar lounges. I know in London they make you take the cigar band off.
Yeah.
Just to add to that level of that you can't judge because you never know what you're inevitably going to end up talking about what you are smoking, but
yeah,
it takes away that level of judgment.
That's the thing. It's the amazing thing is that a cigar time and time again in history has been used as a symbol of power, but it's never been the band on the cigar.
No.
You know what I mean?
It never has.
And it's never been the brand. It's never been what it is. And you can go into a cigar lounge, and a cigar represents both. Well, a cigar is both the ultimate symbol of capitalism and the ultimate symbol of communism.
Yeah.
It's quite incredible.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah, simultaneously, which is a huge juxtaposition and a huge contradiction. I don't think juxtaposition, which is a huge contradiction. And it means that contradictory nature of cigars completely offsets all other boundaries.
Yes.
It does. I've been in a cigar shop I've been in cigar shops all over the world. In DC, I've been sitting with senators and congressmen, and then the bloke who takes out the bins, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's just talking.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't find out they're senators and congressmen and the bloke who takes out the bins until after everyone leaves.
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't matter.
It normally doesn't come up in conversation.
No.
Never.
So what do you do? Yeah.
Yeah. It's always what you're smoking. Oh, I've had that. That's similar to this. It's especially with like touching on the topic you said earlier of how passionate we are as cigar smokers, especially in the UK.
Yeah.
That conversation that just runs and runs and runs and runs.
Yeah, it
Like
really does.
especially when we have our events, it gets to the point where we're literally physically kicking people out, like what you had to do.
Yeah,
With us.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Right, guys, we've gone like 20 minutes. Like you've got leave.
Yeah.
If you left people smoking a cigar to their own devices, you'd be there all day.
No, I've always said, right, and I've had to kick people out of events quite a lot, right, in my working life. But it's only ever the sign of a good event.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
absolutely.
I mean, like, it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
You know, it's not a bad thing. It's because people don't want to leave. I don't want to leave.
No,
You know?
if you didn't actually stand up and go, right, guys, they're shutting up, get out.
Yeah.
We'd still be there now.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Basically.
No, it's fantastic. Well, I've finished my cigar, so we'll round it up
Right.
there. Thank you again for coming on the channel. It's
Thank
always
you.
a delight. Probably
Thank
the
you.
easiest person I ever bring on the channel and interview.
Oh, that's very
Wow,
kind.
full of knowledge.
That's very kind. It's fantastic to see you. Thank you so much.
It's
Thank you,
always a pleasure
seriously.
to have you up here.
You're a legend in many different ways.
I'll take that, and I'm going to snip that.
Fantastic.
And I'm going to show that to my wife. Whenever I'm not, well, this guy said.
Yeah, well, George says.
Yeah, George, and I've got it right here on my home screen saved. George says
I should get like a Patreon of me just saying that about people.
I'm going to get that on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for coming on, mate. Of course, guys, if you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button, enable your notifications. We post twice a week, 7 o'clock on a Tuesday and 7 o'clock on a Friday. And of course, go follow us on social media. Post every single day over there, and you're going to expand your tobacco knowledge tenfold, literally just by following us over there. But thank you for coming along with us on this journey. And until next time, we'll catch you in future videos.